So I'm working on Hab Snaps, trying to expand their usefulness. I want people to have a little bit more freedom when they build spaceships and put structures all around them. One of the problems is, of course, is they're limited in what they can snap to. I guess you have to realize that the snaps are there to help us, and they get in our way. If Bethesda had wanted to, they could have gotten rid of snaps and we could put structures willy-nilly anywhere we want. And the engine's perfectly capable of handling that. But they are a little bit restrictive. And so the whole idea is to remove as many of those restrictions as possible. We can't always do it, but what we can do is get a little bit closer than what we'd normally be able to do. Here's an example of what I'm working on. It's not perfect yet, still a lot of things to go wrong, but we're getting there. One of the things about HABs is that when you place another habitat to them, they create a doorway. And this is great because you can do a lot with that. But sometimes you want to be able to do something that is connected up to a habitat through the door. For instance, maybe I don't like the fact that this Nova cockpit only looks good with the Nova habitat. It's, perfectly seams in there. If we get another habitat like a Deimos or a Tayo, it does not look very good. And there's not a lot you can do about it except use a Deimos and Tayo kind of cockpit. Here's what I'm speaking of. That looks hideous. I got this big interruption right there, and I can't do anything about it. So, through a lot of work, I've come up with something that may be an answer for you. It's not perfect. Part of the problem is I don't know how to do anything with mesh files, at least not yet. And I don't have the ability to do anything with them because I don't have a 3D program, nor could I operate one. But I can do a few other things, and here's what I'm speaking of. You guys who have seen me before, I've talked about Hab Snaps. Hab Snaps have a pretty cool ability to extend snaps into multiple paths. But the problem is, see that picture? It's a pretty picture. And if you put a cockpit or some other habitat there, you're going to, besides not being able to connect up to it, you're going to see a lovely picture. Even if I try to find some way to cheese myself around that, for instance, let's see, that might be it. Then now that's cheesing the snap, and obviously you've seen that I was able to do it. But if I go inside this habitat to this habitat, I'll see that picture. Very irritating. I've come up with a way to replace that. But because it's not perfect, I'm going to make it for habitats only. Don't use them otherwise, because you won't see these again. They're invisible. Until I can find somebody who knows how to create a NIF similar to the doorways, which you've seen. And I'll show you an example here. I love the idea of that. The problem is that this is a 3D object, and when I attempt to use it in place of this, which is not a 3D object, what happens is, even though I could use this mesh file to replace this, what will happen is it'll be perfectly clear one direction, it'll be nice and invisible, but when I turn around and look at it the other direction, it'll be similar to this object, and show a blank face. I need something that is like this object, a 2D object that is that color. And I assume then that the alpha channel will be good enough to make that invisible. For the meantime, here's what I've come up with. It's a half-ass way to do it. And I'm hoping eventually to find a different way, but I've spent many hours pissing about with different mesh files to see if I could come up with something. And no dice yet. What I can do is make something that is invisible. Where is it? Oh boy, you better not lose this, because it could be floating around in here and you'll never find it again. You have to mouse over it accidentally. Ah, there it is. So once you place it, it will not cause this picture, which means that if you place a door over it, which you can't do right now because that snap is taken up and that door demands a certain kind of snap. However, you can get around it. That gets around it. I did not have to cheese that in there either. It just fit right quite nicely. I didn't have to do anything weird. If I take it off, there it is. If I go into that habitat, that doorway or passageway will be perfectly clear. Let's turn that into... Let's turn that into a passageway. And again, we'll have to do it on that side. Stick it here. If you walk inside, you will not see that pink. You will not see this picture. It's a perfect throughway. The reason I did that is because this thing has that abrupt edge, and I wanted to find a way to clean up that edge. There are a couple ways to do it, but they require a lot of effort. And instead of doing that effort, I can just find the right size snap points. Let's see, 33% works fine, 50% works fine here as well. And we can then snap some objects to it to give me a somewhat better transition. Let's see if I can find something to show you. I mean, it's a Deimos spine object. Oops. That's a fairly good transition. What'll happen is the cockpit will fit into that just barely. On the inside, you will see what looks like a bit of wallpaper taking up a couple inches of the cockpit. If you did that on other areas, say going backwards, it will definitely clip into a habitat. But for this, I've just made that transition much cleaner. And that's one of the reasons I've come up with this. I've also come up with larger ones because you might want to do something that's in the middle instead of something way over here. So I've added something a little bit larger. 3 sizes plus the normal one. That's 100%. Goes all the way out to the edge. And I've done 125%. And although this would look stupid, you can come up with your own ideas. Not all of these snap where you'd expect them. Like, for instance, this is down towards the bottom. Some of them are up towards the top, and some of them are in the center. And that's why I've given you so many alternatives. Again, I recommend not using this at all, except in case you need to go between 2 habs. And I don't know if that's going to affect the doorways in the vanilla game. We'll have to find out. But for place your own doors, it does not affect it at all. Place your own doors still works fine. Okay, I'm just showing some new stuff. Hopefully I'll get this figured out in a week or two.